sometimes it is just too much.
So embarrassed.
Am I just talking too much?
I don't remember any of that.
There's a lot I don't remember, too. Too much information?
We say that after every one of these, and for some reason, we're employed all the time.
Too much, it's ruined.
I can't believe we have a show.
We might not tomorrow.
Staci and Hutch say too much.
Here we go! Yay! It is time for Staci and Hutch Say Too Much. We are excited because this guy, I've always wanted to talk to this guy. I've seen so many interviews with him. I've seen him do so many amazing things. He's got so many stories. Jeff Ross is with us.
Hey,
Welcome.
what's up,
Welcome.
gang? Thanks for having me.
Did you coin yourself the Roastmaster General, or how did that come about real quick?
People ask me that. I'm not sure. I remember hearing Jimmy Kimmel introduce me that way at a roast one time, but I don't remember exactly where it came from. I know it's like a take on Toastmaster General, which was an old-time Friars Club thing. So I don't know.
You did the Friars Club a couple times, didn't you?
Many
with Milton
times.
and...
Oh, yeah. Those were my guys.
Was it weird, kind of, in late 90s, roasts were really only exclusive to the Friars Club for the most part. They weren't really, I mean, they were televised here and there. Maybe you could see it, maybe you cannot, but it was exclusive audience. And you really learned the art of the roast, I would say, with those old school guys.
Those guys taught me. And back then there was no internet. You had to get the real deal to tell you how it went down. You couldn't look it up. I had to go to the Museum of Broadcasting to even see the old roast. And I remember walking out at my first roast. I saw Milton Berle and Henny Youngman and Buddy Hackett and these old timers. I said, man, I've seen younger faces on cash.
You did. I remember that. My favorite story that I've ever heard was the B. Arthur one. And it really is an interesting story because not only did you respect B so much, but it kind of gave a glimpse into what these roasts are and not how bad you may feel afterwards,
right.
But it was the early part of your career. And this story is just probably one of the best stories. Can you tell it again? Because you weren't planning on roasting B.
No, man. This was one of my first roasts. We were roasting Jerry Stiller, Ben Stiller's dad. And Jerry at the time was a big star on Seinfeld playing, I guess, George's dad or Jerry's dad, or I can't remember anymore.
George's dad, yeah.
And he was a super funny guy, and it was like his Lifetime Achievement Award to get roasted. He dreamed about a Friars roast. So we put one together, and I was still a young punk. I didn't have a lot of friends in Hollywood, and there was B. Arthur sitting there. I was like, wow, someone should say hi to her or something. No one introduced her. She was just sitting there. And it was driving me crazy that she wasn't really getting her due. In a roast, if you put a joke on somebody, that's love.
Yeah.
If you ignore them, that's mean. Like I didn't want her to be ignored. And it was getting towards the end. I was one of the last people up, and I went on right after Sandra Bernhard, very funny woman, and she kind of sang this risque. She did like a parody of Magic Man, I guess the Heart Song or something like some sexy, gave Jerry a lap dance type, and he was squirming, uncomfortable. The whole room kind of went a little weird. And I made a little note in my margin of my pages that I was just sitting there nervously, and apropos to nothing, I just wrote, I don't know what I could say here, but I wrote B. Arthur's dick. and
you had no joke.
I had no joke.
Wrote B. Arthur's dick.
Correct. And I showed it to the guy next to me who was the ambassador to Spain at the time. I go, and he just saw my notes. The Friars, very eclectic crowd. And he goes, oh man, don't say anything like that. Don't say anything like that. And that's when I knew I had to. And then Sandra finished her set, and I was right up next. And I just said, Sandra Bernhard, holy shit, I wouldn't fuck you with B. Arthur's dick.
Oh, nice.
That was it.
It's good if it makes the Spanish nervous.
Yes.
It med me famous, that joke, or infamous.
Well, and you go on to explain too, because a joke may be written well and may be told well, even ad-libbing a joke may be good. For a roast, it is about a reaction as well.
Yeah.
And her reaction sets you up
right
to do more too.
The joke was okay, but her reaction made it a home run. Her giving me the evil eye, staring me down, the camera cutting to her, it made it explode. And, for years, that was I ate off that joke. Everybody knew me from that joke. This is pre-internet where everything was word of mouth, and It got written up everywhere, and I owe B. Arthur everything.
Yeah. There's so many legends.
And we did make sweet love that night.
Okay. All right, good.
We
Yes,
did.
there you go.
I wish she was here to enjoy all my success.
God bless. I've always been curious to ask you, because I always used to regarding, if we're sticking on the roast things, I always wondered whether you got like almost pigeonholed, like you were great at roasting and that was just kind of your thing. That's what you became known for.
Yeah.
But you've also done like the bumping mics with Attell, who I always loved, and stuff like that. That was cool stuff that you did. And I know your specials was always kind of a big group of like your material, and then you kind of shift it.
Yeah.
Do you kind of like going back to that, like that true stand-up thing, or do you prefer like the crowd work, the roasting? Is there an aspect of your performing
that's the thing? Whenever I'm doing one thing, I miss the other. So
keeps it fresh almost.
It keeps it fresh and you miss it. Right now I'm doing a show that encompasses both, and that's my sweet spot, where I'm doing stories, funny stories from my life, stories of resilience and bouncing back from tough times, and what's behind the thick skin of the roast guy. And at the end of the show, it all culminates in volunteers from the audience getting roasted. Right. But it has more depth, and I have a band and visuals, and it's a more dynamic show than a regular stand-up show. So if you're into the roasts, you're going to love this show. And if you're into sort of just regular life stuff, I think you'll dig it too.
Cool. Is it hard to be doing comedy, and then obviously this is really, for the most part, a one-man act? It's
like a show.
It's so hard to be just by yourself sometimes as a stand-up.
Oh my
alone
gosh, I'm doing
that.
an hour and a half at the Parkway all week. It's like an hour and a half.
But just you talking.
Yeah.
You're also hitting some serious stuff. If people don't know about the story about your parents, they both passed away at an early age. And you said something interesting about loss in an interview one time. And I think it was on Kimmel, and I think I'm going to totally just butcher it, but it was basically like, yes, you can lose and you can be sad. At some point, you kind of just got to move on and work through it. That doesn't mean you don't miss them.
Right.
Are there times where you're doing this stuff, you're roasting Brady or Bieber or whatever, and you're like, man, I wish my folks could see this. I wish
all the time. I think about that because they loved comedy. Cheech and Chong, they used to get stoned and go see Cheech and Chong and go home and wake me up and tell me all the jokes. And they would have been on the road with me. It definitely, it's a little, I wouldn't say heartbreaking because that's not my style, but it definitely is on my mind sometimes, especially when I'm backstage at a friend's show and their parents come back. I get a little jealous because they never saw me perform and they loved comedy.
I'm sure they know. I'm sure they can see
They must know.
They've got to see
That's why we tried to bring it up early in this kind of string of interviews you're doing. Nothing gets a guy ready to be funny like talking about his dead parents.
It always works every time. Nothing funnier. But you know what? I do give a big tribute to them in the show, and I make it funny and heartfelt, and I want people to see their own families in my stories. So it's more of a, how do you put it? Like a communal experience. I wanted my shows to be a cathartic experience. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm doing it 4 nights. Normally with a comic, they come in for one night, Friday, Saturday, maybe, and it's like balls out roasting. Like I wanted this to be more of a theatrical thing, like a one-man show type thing. Yeah. So that people can it's a night out. I want it to feel like a meal when you come see me.
You have so much to offer, and are people surprised after they see the show because they're so used to Jeff Ross as the stand-up or the Roastmaster that you're actually hitting some topics? And do you get a vibe afterwards? Do you hang out with the crowd?
I do. I stay for pictures after because I want to hear feedback because the show that I'm doing now is brand new. Oh. I haven't done it, really much at all. It's probably like 15 times or something, mostly in comedy festivals and workshopping. So Minneapolis has always been a great comedy city. I shot part of a special here a long time ago, and I just love it. The people here, they're fat. They're easy to make fun of.
You got us at our good time, too, to the winter.
That's where I posted. So there's been, obviously, as you know, when we have somebody of your stature coming in, there are 80 people on an email list that is, let's prepare this. And I'm new to Minnesota, and I'm still getting used to
You're
like
from Boston.
I'm from
You
Boston.
mentioned that.
Yeah. And I just thought, oh, these people are not ready for him. The last line of this is by taking a few staples of Minnesota life and getting his initial take on 5 things, yada, yada. We encourage Jeff to react instinctually and be fearless in his takes.
Oh, that's hilarious.
As if that was instruction that was needed. And then the last one, we're hardy Minnesotans. We love to laugh at ourselves.
I wrote
Please
a couple
test
jokes.
that. Please test that
I don't know
downstairs.
if that's going to be true.
Yeah.
Demolish them.
Minnesotans are so fat, even the name of your state has the word soda in it.
Is ad-libbing much harder than a written joke? Because I know a lot of the times, and I don't know how you write jokes, a joke could fall flat if it's a difference between it's or it is. Like there's a weird
timing
and just the apostrophe in the wrong place, or
it's so tricky. And the only way I can ever really figure it out is by doing reps.
You're training yourself.
Yeah. And I want to take this show to Broadway. So part of the reason I wanted to do multiple nights, I just did a few nights in Chicago. Now I'm here for 4 nights, is to get the reps. And then I start to find the nuances and the timing of certain stories, of certain jokes. And you can take a B joke to an A joke just by a slight little tiny adjustment. And you're right. It could be it or it's or whatever.
Yeah. Are you in the know in the moment that fell flat? Take a mental note. Do you have people help you that are in the audience that knows what got the joke?
Yeah, my buddy Steven, who's out there eating lunch.
Oh,
he's just hanging out, you know.
Does he sit back? He goes up to you. We got to punch this one up.
Yeah, he's like, you missed that one. You screwed that one up. Fix that one.
In the moment, is it? Have you ever had anybody get upset with you and then come talk to you after the show when you've done the roasting?
Oh wow, upset with me? Why?
Oh, because of the roasting, they just got mad.
No, but I'll tell you why. Because everyone who gets roasted is volunteer. They have to stand up and volunteer.
So it's their own fault.
Once they volunteer, once they opt in, they're mine.
It was the same thing. I remember you explained that, like, if somebody tries to point at somebody else, you described it as like, no, that's kind of more bullying.
No.
We're waiting for you to volunteer to
be. Yeah.
That type of thing.
No, I want everyone to leave my show, leave a roast going, that was so much fun.
You don't want them questioning
that again. You don't want them going, what a jerk.
Right.
I don't want to bully people or embarrass people. I want them to have fun.
Well, and that was the biggest thing of the Tom Brady roast was your Robert Kraft joke. And people talked about that over and over when Tom came up to you and said something to cut that shit or whatever he said, and Tom knew that the roast was going to be there.
Yeah.
When you roast someone that's not being roasted, in a way, do you get a little nervous? Do you get, oh God, after this, I gotta figure out what I said or what I did?
Well, I mean, everyone there that I mentioned, I think, was getting roasted, but sometimes the only times I've barely gotten people mad at me is when I made fun of people who weren't there.
Right.
And that's a rookie mistake. I don't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Penny Marshall didn't talk to me for years.
Really?
Because I made some crack at some private roast.
Oh.
It's just like, all right, well, you can't take a joke, lady. But, noted. I try to remember that. And since then, I don't ever, I don't know. Maybe a little bit in the front row, I'll mess around with people. But for the most part, I wait till they volunteer. And once they volunteer, they're in. That's why I love Tom Brady. He volunteered. He took the hit so the rest of us could forget our problems for a few hours.
Did he at the end of it? Because I know there are a couple of things. Did he seem like a guy? Because we always knew Tom Brady's kind of an odd duck a little bit.
Yeah,
he is the type of guy who would absolutely volunteer for that. But afterwards, was there kind of a sign that he was like, I kind of regret doing that? Does he seem like some sensitivity in a couple of spots?
I think that roast. I can't speak for Tom, but I think that roast was harsher than any of us could have imagined it would be. There hadn't been a roast in 5 years. People were bloodthirsty for roast style comedy. And Tom, to his credit, man, he really took the hits and he brought it all back. Mm-hmm. He completely changed where comedy was last year. And now I feel like roast comedy and balls out humor is back.
You know who else changed that too? Martha Stewart. Because Martha had such an image and then went to jail and had to come back out of that and reinvent herself because the old Martha couldn't have stayed doing what she was doing. It would have never
we did
worked.
that on the roast for her. She volunteered to do Bieber's roast.
Yeah.
And that hooked her up with a great script, self-aware, so hilarious. She met Snoop and they started working together. And
are there other people in the industry that are like, they could never have the chops to do this? And then you get surprised, for example, a Martha Stewart or
Every now and then, yeah. Bill Belichick was so funny. Gronk was so funny at this last roast.
Yeah.
Who would have thought that they'd be roast comics now?
Yeah.
You never know.
It's so insane on how that happens. Does it annoy you when people come up to you and just start saying mean things to you? Is it
or say roast me?
Yeah.
Well, roast me, I'm okay with, but sometimes people think it's like a party trick that I'm going to do it in the middle of
airport.
Yeah, right. But no, I don't mind. I take it as a compliment because they know who I am and they want to be part of it. And I didn't get famous to let people make me upset. I feed off people's positive energy and all that.
Just to go back for a second, because you said like there hadn't been a roast for 5 years. People were bloodthirsty. Did you have a thought? Because I know everybody was worried with like the pandemic and how people have gotten sensitive.
Yeah.
Were you concerned that there was going to be this sensitivity issue in the world? Or did you think like, no, there's always going to be a place for, there was a slight worry about that at first.
No, it's definitely a concern. There was a time where I was like, I think it's, maybe I should get a real estate license or something. I was like, I think comedy might be dead, at least my type of comedy. And when Will Smith slapped Chris Rock, I thought, whoa, insult comedy. If this guy gets away with this, then if Rock's getting slapped, I'm done.
That's full board for everybody to.
That's when I really was scared. That's when I was really, really scared that it was going to be over.
Chris Rock was one of your big.
Still is. Yeah. I just saw him the other day. He's the greatest. But yeah, the pandemic, when there was no roasting and everybody was ultra sensitive, pretending to be offended by everything. I hate to overuse woke, but everybody was just so on edge about every joke and every moment. I didn't think any celebrities would want to be in the spotlight like that. But Tom, to his credit, no major scandals that he cared about. He just is a big, tall, good-looking guy. He's like, bring it.
How much do you miss?
Who should we roast next? That's the question.
Joan Rivers. How much do you miss? She was probably easy and fun to roast, wasn't she?
She was the greatest.
She was.
She schooled everybody by being the funniest one in her own roast.
Yeah, but she understood who she was. Yeah. Is that the key in roasting? Is understanding who you are, what your character is, because she seems like she was doing it well before on TV, when she filled in for Johnny
that was always her thing, right? Like cutting up Elizabeth Taylor and making fun of celebrities, and she'd be self-deprecating. And I always like roasting comedians because they really get it. When the Joan Rivers roast was one of the best, the Bob Saget roast was one of the greats. I love when a fellow comic, one of our own, is in the hot seat, because then the jokes are really done with love and an appreciation for the craft of joke writing.
Okay, what about Donald Trump? When you roasted him, he's not a comedian. Right. He has one of the biggest egos that we all know.
He's sort of a comedian. Back then, he certainly
was. Yeah, he was so different then.
He was doing Letterman and Howard Stern all the time, and he was playing it for laughs.
Yeah, so he enjoyed it. He got the joke for the most part?
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
I had to tell him to laugh during the commercial break because he was trying to pretend nothing was funny, and maybe nothing was, but his shtick was always to pretend that he wasn't enjoying it. When in fact, he loved the attention.
Especially the joke about you both fantasizing about his daughter.
Yeah. Still true to this day.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And the interesting thing too is that I don't know where you stand on politics, because you roast everyone from every background. Is that deliberate? Are you still kind of like, no one needs to know my politics. I don't need to do this. I don't need to do that. Is that still kind of prevalent in the world today of comedy, where I just want to go for the laugh?
I like to go for the laughs. And I purposely kept politics out of the Tom Brady roast because I wanted it to be sort of a coming together thing for the comics, for the athletes, for everyone. And I thought that worked out. It was like a nice break where we could all come together and not have to think about divisive issues. Yeah. Just laughing. And like yesterday, I spoke to Republican and a Democrat people in Congress about different things. I have friends all over the spectrum, and not just the political spectrum, the autistic spectrum, all of it. I have a wide variety of friends, and I think that makes life more fun, more interesting. I'm not into gangs or hanging out with just people who believe one thing. I kind of I consider myself sounds corny, but a citizen of the world.
I think we learned about that when you started going into prisons and police station and literally roasting some of the most random people you can find.
Yeah.
Is that something that you're going to keep an eye? I do want to get back to kind of your main show.
Yeah.
Because I think that's kind of an interesting growth thing. But are you planning? Do you already have things kind of in the works to do some more stuff
It's
like
been
that?
10 years now since I went to Brazos County Jail and did that special. I guess it's on Paramount Plus now. And I do kind of miss that type of social commentary roasting. I'll get back out there. And once I get through this Take a Banana for the Ride show that I'm doing now, I think I'll get back to bumping mics and I'll get back to doing the roasts, in jails and in police stations. And I did one on the Mexican-American border fence. And they're all up there. You can find them. Yeah. Yep.
Is this kind of with this special that you're doing now, or one-man show is probably a more appropriate way? Do you think this is kind of a culmination of where you've come from? Because it definitely feels like more of this is from my soul type of thing.
Yeah. And it's very autobiographical. It's definitely got soul, my grandfather's soul. I'm wearing his ring right now.
I love that.
Yeah.
Explain that to our people who are watching or listening.
This is a steel bolt from a Nazi U-boat from World War II, the U-505. It's on display in Chicago, actually. I found out not too long ago. My grandfather was a shipbuilder during World War II in Baltimore. And at some point, the U.S. Navy, they were getting killed by these Nazi U-boats out in the war. And eventually, this one captain was determined to capture one. Took a couple of years. They captured it. They dragged it back to America, brought the crew back, let the Nazis think the crew was dead for a couple of years, made the crew teach them how to use the U-boat. And that enabled the Americans to then defend themselves against these U-boats. And at some point, that submarine found its way to Baltimore Harbor. Not sure what was going on. I think it was some sort of fundraising thing, war bonds or something. And my grandfather pulled off a bolt, sanded it down, made a ring, and wore it right till he died. And now I wear it.
What a story.
Yeah.
So see if you can hold that up right to that camera, just people, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Was your love of history come from your grandpa? Or did you kind of have a fascination?
I think that's part of it. He died a long time ago when I was an open mic comedian, and I regret not asking him more about those days. Old guys, they don't ever want to talk about the war. They never want to talk about the old days. I wish I pushed him more because this ring is important. Whenever I need a little pep talk, a little energy boost, world beater energy, I call it. I tap it on something metal. I think about my grandfather.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's more anything badass. He has like a little locket of his fiance. That's far more badass to have something off a German U-boat.
Don't worry about it.
Exactly.
Don't worry about it. All right.
We all need to get cooler.
I got a bracelet I bought on Etsy that says "I love you, darling." He's got the U-boat.
Jesus.
I wish we could talk to you forever. I'm getting the high sign.
You've
got
so
to
come to your show.
Yeah.
Talk about my show for a second, for crying out loud.
So let's talk about the show. We got a couple more minutes with you. The name of the show again represents your love for your grandpa.
Yeah, Take a Banana for the Ride.
Yes, and so you're here doing it for 4 days, 4 nights.
Why do you call it that?
My grandfather, when we were living together, when I was an open mic comedian, and he used to give me bus fare and a banana. He'd say, "Take a banana for the ride."
It's
and that
good
was
for
his
you.
thing. Yeah. It's his way of saying, I can't go with you, but I'm there with you in spirit. And bananas are a running theme in my life, which you'll see when you come to the show. And I hope people do. It's a cathartic experience. It's a fun night out. And I feel like Minneapolis is the right place for me to sort of road test the show.
Yeah.
I need feedback, so I'll see everybody after for pictures and stuff.
March 12th through the 15th at the Parkway Theaters.
What's it like over there?
It's really nice. The theaters here, so many nice theaters here. You are going to just enjoy yourself. And like you said, Minnesota, especially Minneapolis, St. Paul, Twin Cities people, they get it. They understand it. And so I can't wait. Hopefully we can get out and see you. It's going to be a great show.
I love it.
There you go.
Thank you, everybody.
Jeff
Appreciate
Ross.
you so much.
Make sure you check it out again. Parkway Theater. Tickets are still available. And of course, we'll talk hopefully with you again. Come back sometime.
Oh, yeah. Thanks for your researched and thoughtful questions.
Jeff Ross.
We don't know if he's being sarcastic with that.
No.
That one he's serious.
I'm flattered.
It's Staci and Hutch. Say Too Much. KS95.